Welcome to the Run Radio podcast. My name is Trina Rachelle, and my guest today is Tommy Chong. Welcome.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
Absolutely. One of the things that Run Radio really takes pride in is being a platform for independent musicians, independent creators. And I remember reading how you left school and supported yourself by playing music.
Yeah, I sure did. I mean, school really wasn't teaching me, wasn't helping me with my plan.
Did you have a plan?
Happens. Music becomes an addiction
Yeah.
when you find out it raises you from the masses and puts you into the special category. And being that's the only reason I had to be in that special category. It was the only road I could take, and I took it. I love it.
So would you do it again that way?
Yeah, if I had to. If I had to. I mean, the logical or the easier way to do it is to go to school. Uh, but I never got. I'm just a self thing. Where I criticize myself. I school and it depends on the subject. Like anything literature, I was all ears and eyes and loved it,
Really?
But when it came to math, I struggled. I struggled because I'm not a math guy.
Mm-hmm.
My wife, on the other hand, she's so comfortable, and my sons too. Yeah. My sons are very comfortable with numbers, adding. They can add in their head, and you say something, and they say, "Oh, that was 40 years ago." So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I, I'm more the dreamer. In fact,
Yeah.
I was told when I was really young that he just daydreams. He's a daydreamer, and so that's where I'm at. And daydreamers make good writers, I think,
Uh-huh.
because we're always living in some fantasy, or some, like if I read a book like Tom Sawyer, the book, Mark Twain, really had an effect on me when I was that age, because it just spoke to me, about that age, and how Tom was with his girlfriend and his friend. He was just coming into life. And and then I realized somewhere along the line, I was more interested in real life, everyday life,
Yeah.
than I would in the future of I just I guess I really think I'm ordained. It was I'm one of those special people. I guess when I was younger, I passed the test. The spiritual world is always looking for helpers. People
Mm-hmm.
to help. And I guess it has something to do with karma. You
Yeah.
know, there's a saying, when the pupil is ready, the teacher appears. You know,
Yeah.
and I think all considered, especially now. I couldn't evaluate my life back then. Because I was too busy living it.
Yeah.
And now I'm at the point where I can kind of evaluate and go over and sort of rehash events and that, and ask that question, that Chris Christopherson asked. He got inspired one time to write a song, and it was so divinely inspired that he wrote a song about, "Why me, Lord?
Yeah. Yeah.
What have I ever done to deserve even one of the treasures I've known?" So that's where I'm at now. That's where I feel I'm at.
So if you liked literature so much, did you consider writing and being a writer? Did that cross your mind at all?
I never I was so busy living my life that I had no time really to plan it.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
when you say living, what was always keeping you in the moment? Because I think a lot of us could probably do that more.
well, it's not a choice really.
Yeah.
You know, it really is events, you know, that unfold, and that's what happened to me. I was when I was young, you know. First of all, I was born in a manger, not born, but I lived in a manger. Yeah. My dad was a homesteader. He applied for and got land up north of Edmonton, and and so when I was born in Edmonton, Alberta, at the hospital, I imagine, and but we moved out to when I was a baby out to the I think it was a turkey farm. He was trying to raise turkeys, I believe, which is really really dangerous and tough.
Oh,
You know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because turkeys are basically vultures, you know, and so especially for babies in that, you know, not that I was in any danger, but you know, being that yeah, like no, I'm just going on what my mother told me. My mother, by the way, was 20% Native,
Hmm.
which I found out, you know, found out a couple of years ago. So I was really raised like a native child, you know. And so my first crib in that, what my mother said was in this re recovered chicken coop.
Yeah.
You know, they had there was no really place for us to live, so they cleaned out this chicken coop, and that's where we lived. This my mother told me, and then my dad he couldn't make a go of it with the turkey farm, so he had to go into Edmonton, look for work, and then he eventually just joined the army
Oh,
with his buddies. And so as a baby, then I all of a sudden living in Edmonton, and then on the train to Truro, Nova Scotia, right across, you know, the whole continent or the country. And my mother, we I guess I was two, one, two, somewhere around that, and she dressed us up like little soldiers, you know, and we were cute little guys, little brown guys, and so we hit the road with my mom. And then we kind of followed my dad. Well, first of all, you know, when he was in training to go overseas, was in Nova Scotia. And then when he got shipped overseas, then my mother took us and we started staying with relatives of her sisters and brothers on our way back to another relative in British Columbia. So we went right across Canada looking for places to stay.
well,
I mean,
at what point was music introduced to you then?
at what point, what?
When was music, you playing music, introduced to you?
It's funny, you know, the Ukrainian war has a lot more effect on me than normal because my mother's sisters, my aunts, all married into the Ukrainian families.
Hmm.
So my uncle, I got into music when I heard my uncle. I was toddler, maybe three, two and a half, probably two and a half. Uh, and we were at his cabin in British Columbia, outside of Trail, BC. And he had a dog sled at the time. And he was a trapper, a fur trapper. But before he went on his fur trapping, he played a thing on the banjo.
Hmm.
And and I remember it. You know, I was a toddler, but I remember very clearly hearing that note, those banjo notes. It just electrified me. And so when my uncle left to do his trap line, I followed the banjo.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
and I was a little guy, and no one saw me. And so when they came back to the house, they said, "Where's Tommy?" And I wasn't in the house,
Oh.
and no one was looking for me. And and this is in the woods. This is when you can get lost if you walk
Yep.
5 minutes, 5 seconds into the woods, you know. And so they went all, the people that were there, my mother and everybody went looking for me, and they found me on a stump with the dog. The family dog was kind of laying with me,
Oh.
protecting me. So that was my first taste of music. I remember it as clear as it was today. I can even actually hear that banjo note that it electrified me. And so that was the first time. And then years later, we would visit my Chinese uncle and his Ukrainian wife,
Oh my goodness, cool.
and they had adopted a teenage son,
Uh-huh.
or he was teenage when we got to know him. And so when I was about 8, 9 years old, then, and would visit and I would head right for his bedroom because, 16-year-old bedroom, a guy's bedroom is full of all sorts of treasures. And so I would go to his bedroom and play his 12 bass accordion
Mm-hmm.
that his parents bought him, hoping he'd get into music, but he just left it there. And so when I discovered it, then every time I'd go over to my uncle's place, I'd go into the bedroom and put on that accordion and just play tune, just pick out tunes by ear. And one day I remember going home and my uncle and my aunt said, "Oh, don't forget your accordion." And
They
they
sent
gave
you
it
home with it.
they gave it to me because the son wasn't playing it. And my mother always had when she was pregnant with me, she bought a cheap Sears guitar,
Mm-hmm.
and she would hold it on her tummy and strum it. And I think that had something to do with it too, because eventually that was the only guitar in the house. We were quite poor, My dad, we, my mother never worked. She spent almost 5 years in the sanitarium for TB, and so my dad was the only source of income, other than the children's allowance, by the way, which actually saved our family. It was like $14, $15 a month, but it was enough to buy the food and the necessities
Yeah.
that to live. And there was just me and my brother and my sister and my mother and my dad, and we lived in this little unheated, like a reservation house.
Yeah.
It was little bungalow, outdoor plumbing, and a yard, in a nice yard. I got the picture hanging in my bathroom of the kids, and
Cool.
and to me, that upbringing was magical. It was so magical because it was so it was native. I
Yeah.
found we were actually living like natives, and when you live like natives, you really get close to the earth, and when you get close to the earth, you get close to the divine, because that our job really on earth is to take care of it. Clean up your room. You know how
For
they tell
sure. Right.
clean up your room. Well, earth is our room.
Yeah. We need to do a better job, but that's another time, another topic.
Well, no, I do that. I do that too. When I got out of prison, uh, I went to prison in my late 60s, and so when I got out, I wasn't as young as I used to be. Working
Yeah.
out and that, and so I would walk from my house down the mountain, kind of
Mm-hmm.
to the breakfast place. And then I'd walk back, and then I started taking garbage bags with me, and because when I was in prison, one of the jobs I had was cleaning up, sweeping the sidewalk and cleaning,
Yeah.
junk up, and so I'd automatically when I walked anywhere, if I saw garbage, I'd pick it up, put it in the garbage can. and so I started doing that during my walk at the Palisades in California, and it was a gratifying experience.
Yeah.
I have a hard time now walking by garbage on the street.
Yeah.
You know, my instinct is to pick it up and put it
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I did that in LA, I'd have a steady job for the rest of my life.
For sure. When you started supporting yourself, playing the guitar, and
Yeah.
how long how long did you do that? How long was that your bread and butter?
Well, there's an unwritten rule in the music business. In fact,
Hmm.
what do you call a musician that's without a girlfriend? Homeless. Because the first rule of music is to find a girl that worships you, and
Hmm.
then make sure, well, she'll have a job because that's the age, and that's what I did. Not only I found my first wife, Maxine, who I'm still very close to. She was 14 when I met her, and I was 17, but she was the sister of the piano player in the band, and so when I had the band, we first started the band, I was living at home, so I didn't have to worry about rent. And then we got kicked out of Calgary. That's another story. The band did, and I went to Vancouver, and that's when I had to support myself, and which I did. I never. A lot of the musicians, they go the pimp or the dealing, the criminal way, for
Yeah.
money. But I never did. I never did. When I was younger, I went to Sunday school because it was the only um, reason we had to get dressed up when you're
Yeah.
poor, is to go to Sunday school, and it took all the lessons it took. I was primed for it anyway
Yeah.
because that's my karma. That's my my path that was given to me, and I know it was. I know it was because because everything that happened to me is so serendipity. I mean, look at me. I'm sitting in the Palisades and hotel next to it. They got 10 million, $30 million homes right next door to me.
Like
That are
if someone were just introduced to you, or maybe recently heard about you, you would think, total rebel, ornery guy. But as you're telling me about your upbringing, it seems so wholesome and very innocent. Where do you think the kind of transition happened where you found that spark or that spunk, the kind of ornery and comedic turn?
well, one of the first things I realized, thanks to who we are, my my dad, my dad was full blood Chinese,
Mhm.
Cantonese, and my mother was what we thought was half Scotch and Irish,
Mhm.
but the Irish turned out to be native.
Mhm.
So my mother was at least 20, according to DNA, she's over 20% native,
Mhm.
which meant her mother was half. And that was my grandmother, who I never met because she committed suicide, I think before I was born, or near there. No, yeah, before I was born. When my mother was a little girl, and so my mother had no schooling. She was taken and put into a domestic situation where she was a housekeeper,
Mhm.
you know, and so she never went to school. She had a grade 3 education, and her letters showed it. But her letters were so beautiful. I mean, she was such an angel. I had no idea until I started doing research, And she was, she's always been. I mean, she had uh, she finally, when I got to hug her, I was what over 5 years old, because she spent a lot of time in the sanitarium.
Mhm.
So I'm a little weird with time because back then because when you're young, it's you have no concept of with days, weeks, months, hours.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
this birth. You know what? I could remember my birthdays because I never had a
Yeah.
birthday party until I was 7 years old, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and we never celebrated Christmas together until Pop got out of the army and we got our little house. And our first Christmas, whoa, I remember it so well because it was our first Christmas
Yeah.
in our own house. Up until then, we lived in other people's homes. Their brother, uncles, aunts,
Yeah.
and then when we got our own house and we had our own Christmas, that was so special. Even
Good
though we had
deal.
our plumbing, I mean, when you're young, you have no clue what really exists there. And when
Yeah.
you do, one time uh, when I was, I guess, 8, uh, these missionaries drove where we were in the country and asked us if we wanted to go to Bible camp. And just to ride in a car, I'd say, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Just
I've
to get in the
never
car.
seen cars in our neighborhood. And if a car came in, it was either an ambulance or police, and it was the missionaries. And so I went to Bible camp, and I just blossomed. That's where I really, really blossomed because
Yeah.
everything made sense to me. The songs sing around the campfire and the message that they were sending, about Jesus, about the Bible, about being good, and the power of prayer.
Yeah.
That's where I learned how to pray in at the Bible camp. In fact, at the end of the camp, I there was a girl and myself. We were awarded the nicest guy people in camp award,
Oh.
and I got it. I got it. My brother, on the other hand, they didn't listen to him. He was older than me, and running. He was running with the rough crowd. But when I learned what I learned to this day, it just was astounding because the first thing I learned to do, they teach you at the Bible camp was now we're in the tent, we're camping out. And that's exciting. We're right beside a lake. So there's no showers. In the morning, you got up and jumped in the lake
Yeah.
and swam and washed and whatever. And then then the rest of the day was all beautiful Bible stories.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so beautiful. And we had these young girls, teaching us. Oh, it was one of my favorite times, and especially when I won the best award. And it was before boyfriends, girlfriends kind of thing.
Yeah.
Although even at that age, when you met a girl your age and you become friends, it was
Yeah.
especially summer romances. That was fun. But that really literally changed my life because when you learn the power of prayer at that age, oh my
Is that
God,
still a go-to for you? Prayer?
oh big time, big time, big time. What do you do? Like St. Paul said, you reach a point where you pray without ceasing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In other in other words, your mind is always on God in a sense that you're just when you become thankful. You see, here's what I learned from the whole books, the holy books, and that it tells us, defines our role on earth, and what our role really is to learn, to
Mm.
observe. You look at the Bible, we are beholders. Behold of the greatness of the Lord, and always keep God's name holy, spirit. yeah, divine, divine. I always realized that. And there's so many things they teach, but if you, I learned from other, the Chinese philosophers. I was just on a site now where it's Confucius and all these Lao Tse. Anyway, they got all these great one word sayings, and when you get like I did, I saw the results in the. For instance, my mother, she was very, very sick. TB. They operated. They took a lung out before
Oh,
they because she was native,
yeah.
and so instead of giving her the good medicine, they just boom practiced. That's what
Mhm.
they would native people, practice their surgery and stuff, because what was the down? Nothing. And so she was so beautiful and so close to God, so close to being an angel, that she was literally blessed with this power, of gentleness and kindness and beauty. And yet, but her and my dad would natter at each other, bitch and moan and carry on. Yeah. I loved it. I loved my family. They were so cool. And my brother, he was my older brother, but he was responsible for getting me a lot into comedy
Yeah.
because he was mean. He was 3 years older than me, and he was raised in the country like a little half breed native that he was. And when I was when we were in the home together, he had to go to school because he was old enough to go to school, and he had to fight his way there and back. You talk about bullies, back
Yeah.
in the day, if you were a native or any kind of weird thing, And so that's what my mother told me right off the bat. She said, "You're different, and people are going to look at you. And so it's up to you how you conduct yourself, because you're going to be noticed." And that stuck with me my whole life because then I realized, and then the other lesson I learned is that if you make people laugh, they won't hit you.
Oh, yeah.
And so starting with my brother, I
Uh-huh.
would make sure that he was always in a good mood, if I could, and I would cry. That was my defense.
Yeah.
I could cry immediately, right
Yeah.
away. Leave him alone. Leave your brother alone. And my brother looked at me and said, "Oh, I'll kill you."
Mhm.
But he toughened me up. He made me tough. I had no choice. He showed me how to, take a punch. And then athletics, he was really good, and I was okay. But I spent a year in the hospital, so my legs weren't really fully developed. and and so I thank God I couldn't do sports, because I would have been probably dead by now.
Smushed.
Yeah. Well, my brother died. He died a couple of years ago,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it was from old age, but mostly from the scars and the wounds and the stuff that he had suffered when he was an athlete. He was a
Yeah.
top, a good athlete. But what I learned, and when you learn the power of prayer,
Mm-hmm.
you can turn on TV anywhere and you see the results of it because you got all these evangelists, a lot of people, making a really good living off the knowledge of the power of prayer. It works. It
Uh-huh.
works. Now, the only thing you have to worry about is your own soul, to speak. So it doesn't matter who you are if you're not honest, if you're the least bit dishonest, uh, you know it. See,
Well, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but what do you think about the way religion and churches are today? I mean, does that line up with your idea of spirituality or prayer and what Jesus would do?
To tell you the truth, yes, yes, it does. Yeah, I know what I was going to say about the power of prayer is is known by these evangelists, all these people. Now, your intent, just like watching the Donald Trump trials, the crime is in the intent. What did you intend to do? If you're raising money to buy a jet airplane, so you can go take expensive vacations, and you do it by, conning your followers into giving your money because of God or because of what, fear or whatever, that in itself is such a sin that whoever commits it are going to be paying a few lifetimes, or at least that's my estimation. The good news is that you can be forgiven instantly, but you have to change your ways, and if you don't, then you're on a course. You're going to learn, and the thing is, see, we live in between a spiritual world, which is heaven, they want to call it, and the physical world. Now, in the physical world, which we're in now, it's full of violence and chaos, and one is allowed to lie, not encouraged so much, but allowed to. In other words, the freedom, the free will that we are born with is totally free. We have to make these choices ourselves. No one's going to make these choices for us. Now, like I said, being an orphan, or being without mom and dad for a lot of years, forced me to find the refuge, you know. And when I found it, then and the thing is, ask and ye shall receive. If you, that's what the power of prayer is. If you know what to ask for, and the greatest thing to ask for is wisdom. See, that's what I did. I said, please give me the wisdom that I need. And it's done instantly. It's so crazy how this works. And that's why you can't, never want to harbor a grudge, because what a grudge really is a piece of the past that is no longer with us. And so what you're doing, it's like you're carrying a stillborn baby around. It's dead, but you're still carrying it around, thinking that what, it's alive, it might come alive or whatever, but it's dead, it's gone, it's finished. That's the past, you see. And so when you learn these things, and then you learn to stay in the present and deal with the present, whatever it is, whatever is going on. But the good news is that we are eternal beings. There's nothing to fear. That's why if you have faith, that's all you need, because you really create your own reality. Yeah, sure. And that's what Jesus taught, that no matter how bad they treat you, physically, mentally, morally, whatever, as long as you believe in God, then you're fine. Because everything that you're going through is to teach. It's a learning experience, you see. And so that's why, there's a saying, only the good die young.
Yeah.
The old guys live on forever. The thing is, there's no death. There's just transition. And so our bodies are like a rented car.
Yeah.
When you're finished with it, go back to heaven, get a new one, get assigned a new one. And by the way, we pick our own uh, future. We do. Now, it's hard to believe, but it's true. And so people that are making mistakes, evil people in the country, that's where forgiveness comes in, you see. Because again, let go of the past. If someone does something really evil and everything else, but it's done, okay, it's done. And if you cling to it, then you will suffer the consequences, in other words. And that's what's happening. That's what happens with this earth. Now, the earth itself, with all these record heat waves and everything else we're going through now, is a product of neglect. You see, we were told many years ago that climate change was going to be on us, and it's going to be horrible. It's going to be doing exactly what it's doing. And the people that you can't believe that fake news, that's lying, blah blah blah. You know, people lie because they're too lazy to deal with the truth.
Ooh,
It's much easier to, huh?
That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, yeah. It's a laziness, and they don't want, and it's also a learning tool. That's what I learned too. That's what being evil and being, Trump is a good example. Now, when Trump was running, I smiled every time he had mentioned his name because he's an entertainer. He's a comedian, and he's fun to watch on TV because he's so outrageous and so funny, and he looks funny, but he's always got beautiful people around, beautiful girls for sure, and that's the nice part of that's the nice part of him. Now, the people around him, they're there for different reasons, but usually what everybody gets excited, what everybody gets addicted to is the fame and the fortune, not to so much the fortune, because most people have no clue what to do with money, but the fame, to be recognized and have people say, "Oh, there, hey, nice to see you." Yeah. I've got a lot of friends that really don't believe in what I do, what I've done, blah, blah, none of that shit, but they like being around me because people treat them differently when they're around me. And I know that.
I hate to have to close this off. I sure hope you come back and talk more. And I love the takeaway to pray for wisdom. That is very insightful. And
Well, it's very simple.
Before we close, is there anything that you want to make sure people know where they can follow you? Are you keeping up on your TikToks?
Well, my attitude, I'm here. If you understand, if you like what I say, then tune in. You have to do the work. I can't, I can only give you my answers to your questions. That's the only thing.
I appreciate your time so much. Thank you very much, Tommy.
And if anything, now I'm at the point, I'm so old now that I get paid to shut up. As opposed
Hey, that's not bad. It's something to work for. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, darling. We'll see you again.
Bye.
Bye-bye.